Have you ever heard the phrase narcissistic baiting? Narc baiting is a tactic used by narcissists to provoke an emotional reaction from other people. They do it to get them supply for themselves, and I'll talk about what supply is. It took me a while of listening to terminology like the word supply before I finally understood what it meant and what it was. So, subscribe to me. I'm the Narc Abuse Recovery Babe. I am a narc abuse survivor, domestic abuse survivor, and I'm going to talk tonight about all things narcissistic baiting. But before I do, I don't know if any of y'all read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover or saw the movie, but I was actually really excited when the movie came out because I was like, finally, a movie that actually talks about domestic violence and domestic abuse. Again, I've said before on my episodes that I always thought it meant hitting, but there's actually so much more to domestic abuse, not just hitting. There's so much more to it. And I was excited when the movie came out, but I'm super annoyed because Blake Lively, I mean, she's completely taken all the attention away from the actual movie and put it all on herself. So I don't want to say anything bad about her because I don't want to be the next um, target of her lawsuits. No, she won't sue me or can't sue me. But anyway, if you haven't seen It Ends With Us, it's a good movie. Basically highlighting a real problem in our country and in our world, which is domestic abuse. Happens more than people think it does. And then while I'm speaking about shows, I don't know if you've seen the series called Made, MAID. But when I watched that, I just boohooed because it was a lot of what I actually went through. And I know a lot of abuse survivors chatting on different social groups that I'm in have said that they weren't ready to watch it or it was too close to home or using the word triggering. But for me, I thought that it really showed why women and men, I know men are in these relationships too, don't leave. I think before I went through everything that I went through, I always thought, oh, why wouldn't a woman just leave? And it is actually so complicated. It's almost hard to explain. I know in my situation, I didn't have anybody to go to. I mean, how do you knock on someone's door, especially if you've been isolated away from everybody, your friends and your family? How do you knock on their door and say, "I need a place to stay"? I mean, it's just. And then there's this snowball effect that happens of, especially if they control the money, not having resources, and then also just being in a total state of shock. There's a lot that kind of snowballs into it. But from what I understand, the series Made MAID, I believe it's a true story. I've heard it's a true story, but it's really worth seeing. Okay, so without further ado, today I'm going to talk about narcissistic baiting. The first time I heard about narcissistic baiting was actually in the throes of my divorce. Is throes the right word? My ex was accusing me of things I wasn't doing and just saying things about me that weren't true, and to my family, my children, my in-laws, my his whole side of the family. And I was just beside myself, distraught. And it seemed like every time I turned around, he was just doing things to get a response out of me. And I felt like I was in this constant mode of defending myself and getting upset, getting angry at him. And um, it was the weirdest experience. And my attorney said, don't take the bait. And I was like, it was the first time I had really heard that phrase, and I didn't fully understand what it meant. And don't take the bait. And abusers will bait you, and they are doing it intentionally. So narcissistic baiting is a tactic used to provoke an emotional response out of you, and they do it for a whole lot of reasons. They do it very deliberately. They use a series of manipulative tactics to get you to respond. And more than two reasons why, but the first one is they crave attention. And so they'll do it. They get some form of, it's called narcissistic supply. When you react, they get a thrill out of it. Number one. So abusers can poke at you to get you to blow up or get upset or cry, and it makes them feel powerful over you. And so there's that. But then the second thing that they'll do, and what I experienced, was doing it while there are other people around. So they could step back and say, oh, look at, oh, poor me. I'm with this person who's over here all upset or angry or yelling or running away, or, all the reactions that you can have when somebody is intentionally manipulating you. And so, and because I walked through that and experienced that with him, when you're the person that is having that done to you, it's very confusing. That is the biggest descriptive word that for me, it's just very confusing, but it's also extremely emotional, because there are different things that the abuser will do to get you to respond. And so I'm going to walk through those. Okay, so the first tactic that they will do is creating fear and panic. They may say things to you to make you, and your adrenaline just shoots up right away. But they may use threats, whether direct threats or very subtle indirect threats. They might say, if you don't change, I will take the house and the kids. Like, what kind of thing is that to say to somebody? But it causes a reaction. But their whole goal is to make you afraid and make you panic, because when you're in panic mode, your reactions, you just don't really think clearly. For me, when he would do this to me, I would leave the house, because I would go into like freak out panic mode, and he would say something to me or treat me a certain way or say something in front of the children. And for me, I would just feel this rush of panic, and I would not know what to do except leave. And I would grab my purse and I would leave the house, and fight or flight. I would go into flight mode, and because I didn't know what else to do, for him, he used that against me. Like, well, she's always leaving, or she's never home, so it's really messed up. And when you're in that space, I wish I had been able to see that he was baiting me. He was intentionally baiting me, because he knew that I would get upset and leave, because it didn't have any other response. Now I would have just said, okay, or whatever, and gone about my business. But I didn't know that that's what was being done to me. Second tactic that they'll use is the smear campaign. That was done to me in a big way. I didn't know until actually after the relationship ended, way after it ended, during my healing process, I didn't realize that the smear campaign started way before I even know what was going on. Because with me, he was all, "Hey, babe," and like nothing was, nothing was wrong. And then, but I found out afterwards that he was actually talking about me and spreading rumors about me behind my back with friends, relatives, family. That's why I refer to the show Made, because one thing that they do is they isolate you away from other people. And so truly, if someone, especially, well, I don't want to say especially female, but a lot of times the men will control the finances. So but when an abuser has all the power and control, and they set up the relationship dynamic like that, then it's almost impossible for the woman to leave. Who do they go to? And now I'm talking about why women stay. But not only that, but I was in a relationship where I was defending him. I was trying so hard to keep the peace and be a good wife and, all of these things. There's no way in the world I would call anybody and talk about him because I loved him, So anyway, but yeah, the smear campaign, like by the time the relationship was over, his whole family who I loved, they had already disappeared. Like they were gone. They were like, "Oh yeah." Even I think my father-in-law was the first one I called. And I was like, "I think our marriage is ending." And he's like, what did he say? He said, "Oh, it's been a long time coming." And I was like, "Huh?" I didn't know what he was talking about because I had just heard about it. And for me, I was like, "Uh-oh, bumps in the road." And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's been a long time coming." And, that memory post breakup, that really stuck with me because I thought, what is he talking about? And now I know that my ex had the smear campaign going probably the whole time we were married. I have no idea because I have moved forward and it's all in my past now and I'm much better off. So I don't do any digging around. I'm like, whatever, I'm out of that. But when I did reach out to my father-in-law, who I loved, and he had that reaction, I just thought, where did that come from? And now I know what it is. There was a smear campaign. But they'll lie about you and, they manipulate. They want to control what other people think of you. So, they will tarnish your image. They'll share your secrets with them. They spread rumors behind your back. They'll accuse you of drinking or doing drugs or gambling or they'll undermine your relationships with them. They don't want you to have anybody to turn to. And that's part of that isolation. So, and then also when the relationship does end, they call it the discard. It's the discard phase at the end when you can no longer serve their purpose or they can't control you anymore. They've already found someone else, a new supply. And then they have the discard. They just like, you're gone. And so by the time that discard ends, they need to, because they need to have a perfect image, they've had to talk about you behind your back the whole time. So everybody's like, "Oh, poor ex." Let's call him Larry. Poor Larry. He's had to put up with so much all those years, and, good for him for finally leaving. He tried everything he could, Meanwhile, I'm like, what is going on? And they're all gone. So anyway, smear campaign, the worst part about it is you don't even know it's happening. And a lot of times, then you do notice that there may be conflict with people, and you're like, what is going, why is that person not talking to me anymore? And it's because the controller is controlling information, feeding them information about you, and you information about them, because they want to break everybody up and break you away from everybody. Okay. Big stuff. So that's the smear campaign. The next thing they'll do is they'll make false accusations, and they'll blame you for things that you're not doing. It is so gaslighting. And if you're watching videos on narcissism, you will hear that word a lot, gaslighting, but it is so real. It is they wake up in the morning and they're like, who can I gaslight today? But anyway, they'll blame you for things, and they'll blame you for things I have read that they're actually doing to you. And it's weird. They might blame you for cheating. You're cheating on me. I don't trust you anymore. And you're like, what? I'm not cheating on you. What are you talking about? And all of a sudden you're in defense mode, and you're like, please, babe, what can I do to earn your trust? Please, babe, how can I love you better? Babe, I'll tell you where I am at all times, whatever. But that is, they're baiting you to get a reaction out of you. They want that attention. So that's one way they'll do it. They might blame you for doing something that you didn't do, like accusing you of stealing something. And you're like, what? I didn't steal anything. Or they'll accuse you of saying something to them that you didn't do. I got that a lot in the discard phase. He said, you've abused me all these years. And I was like, what are you talking about? And now I'm like, was he projecting because he was actually mistreating me all those years? I don't know. But he also said to me, you've wanted a divorce for 10 years and I'm finally giving you one. And I was like, what are you talking about? So it's, they're doing it to provoke you, to get an emotional response, typically a negative one, but also it could be a begging one, an apologizing one. I cannot tell you how many times I apologized for things that I did not do. And actually, this is really interesting because my boss, who I loved, she's one of the best bosses I've ever had, but she, in my one of my reviews, she said, I'm going to tell you something, and I don't want it to upset you. And I was like, bracing myself. What did I do? And she said, you've got to stop apologizing. And I was like, what? And she said, you have to stop apologizing for things that you didn't do wrong. And I went, I apologize too much. I'm sorry. And she was like, see, okay, you're doing it again. But she pointed that out to me. And this was years ago. Not that long ago, maybe 6 years ago. But I have now that I'm on the other side of this, have actually read that that abuse victims will apologize for things that they aren't doing because they're so trying to keep the peace. And so we are in a habit of apologizing. But what she said to me was, if you have made a mistake at work, then it's okay to say, to want to make amends. But hold on, I have to sneeze. Oh my gosh, it's fast. But she said, you can say my apologies. I will correct it or whatever. But she said, but before you start to just automatically say, I'm sorry, stop and ask yourself, did I really do anything wrong, or is this really my fault? Anyway, my point to telling that scenario is I was in such a habit of apologizing, feeling like I'm doing something wrong. And, I've also heard the phrase walking on eggshells. Um, and growing up in a dysfunctional family too. I mean, there's the scapegoated child who's constantly trying to make the peace and apologizing and apologizing. Anyway, where was I? Oh, okay. So they will make false accusations and blame you, and it's an attack. It's an attack to get you to turn your attention to them and just cling to them. I loved my husband. When he said those things to me, I was like, babe, what can I do to make you not feel that way or make you feel bad? And now I know it was all a huge manipulation of him just toying with my emotions. So, what do you do when you're being falsely accused? If you deny and defend yourself and you try to explain yourself and no, I didn't do it, no, I didn't do it, no, I didn't do it, you're actually giving them exactly what they want. So, don't deny. And this is the situation I was in when my attorney said, "Don't take the bait," and I thought, what, okay. All right. If they are accusing you or saying mean things to you to get a reaction, just don't respond. Just say, okay, and walk away or whatever. Don't take the bait. Just, they want you to react. They're falsely accusing you, so you will defend yourself. So just don't go, okay. I hear the phrase hoovering a lot, and hoovering, I think I've heard that it's named like a vacuum cleaner, the Hoover vacuum cleaner, but hoovering is when they'll stonewall you, like disappear. And I'm about to talk about stonewalling because that's a manipulative tactic, but then they'll hoover you back in. So they ultimately, their whole thing is controlling you. It's all about control. They want to control how you feel, what you do, who you see, where you are. They are controlling you while they're off doing their, whatever it is they're doing that you don't know about. And so part of them baiting you is to put all this focus on you. Like, you're bad. It puts this huge spotlight on you and the things you're doing wrong to get you to respond in a way. So it is diverting from whatever it is they're off doing. And I've also heard that accusing you of things can be what's called projection, where they're doing something but they project it onto you, like a projector in a movie screen. So anyway, hoovering. So now I'm all over the place. Hoovering is when they, so they're mistreating you to control your emotions, but they can't mistreat you too much or too obviously because they don't want you to go away. So when you are kind of like, hey, I don't know about this relationship, maybe I am going to leave or whatever. They don't want that yet. So they hoover you back in. So that's when they come back around with, hey, babe, and love gestures and taking you on a date, doing little things, buying you a gift. And then you're like, oh, this feels good again. Yes, okay, we're going to be okay after all. And then you come back into the relationship again and they've got you back. They've got you back. In your mind, you think that you're in this loving, sharing relationship, but in their mind, they're just controlling you. Okay. So they don't want you to leave. They don't want to lose control over you. So they bring you back in with what's called hoovering. And it's a manipulation tactic to control their victim by giving you, that attention that you want. And then the other phrase that you'll hear around hoovering is, and are kind of all intertwined with what I'm talking about, is breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing is when they'll give you just a little bit to keep you in the relationship or in the control. But it's all fake. It's not real love. It's just control. So breadcrumbing, I always think of, is it Hansel and Gretel that went through the woods following the little breadcrumbs? But yeah, you'll just get just a little bit. Like mine brought me flowers. Oh, this is great. Okay. Um, so during the dating phase or the checking you out phase, they study you to see what you like, what you don't like, what you'll put up with. And mine at the time, we were just friends, and I had a boyfriend at the time. And Larry, my ex, Larry, asked me, we were hanging out one night. We were just friends, but he asked me, he said, "Hey, um, does Dave bring you flowers?" And I was like, "No, he doesn't." And Larry said, "If I was dating you, I'd give you flowers all the time." And I was like, huh, maybe I'm dating the wrong guy. And sure enough, that's when I started thinking, hey, maybe I'm interested in Larry, and instead of broke up with my boyfriend and started dating Larry. And he showed up with flowers and brought me flowers, like, I don't know, once a week or something, the entire relationship. And it was his way of breadcrumbing me. So in my mind, I thought, I put up with all the things he didn't do for me, because in my mind I was like, well, he loves me, he brings me flowers, and that's breadcrumbing. But hoovering can be that way too. So in the beginning, when he was like, I'd bring you flowers, and then started showing up with them, that was the hoovering. That's just suck you in like a Hoover vacuum cleaner. So if you're in an abusive relationship and you've broken it up, or you've left, or he's left, or whatever, and this is something that was told to me early on too, watch out for the hoovering, because the breakup had already happened. But yeah, someone warned me. They said, watch out, because he might show back up and be all, I'm sorry, and I love you, and it was a big mistake, and all that. Watch out, because that's the Hoover. So I'm glad that someone warned me about it. It hasn't happened, but if it does, I will say no gracias. Okay. So yeah, they say, it might be hard to resist, but you have to remember all the bad things that they did and just say no and be done. You will be better off without it. Okay. Then another thing that they'll do to bait you is called playing the victim and guilt tripping. The one huge manipulation that I saw in my relationship was mine would bait me with witnesses around, and he would do what's called dog whistling, which you'll hear about the dog whistle, where he would say something to me that would take me from 0 to 100. But it was, he would say something that if anybody else heard it, they wouldn't know what he was talking about. That's why it's called a dog whistle. But I would get upset, and then other people would see me get upset. And then later he, I don't know what he did later on this, but he could say, see? So yeah, and then playing the victim, because he couldn't be the bad guy. He had to make me the bad guy. So it was just a huge setup. So anyway, that's what narc baiting is, and basically emotionally triggering you to try to get you upset, especially in front of people. They love that. And then we'll talk about more another time, but think about the things that I've said and subscribe. Send this to someone that you think might need to hear it. And if you are getting manipulated by a narky narc, just remember what my attorney told me: don't take the bait.